Artemis Fowl is Disney's latest film, which is an adaptation of the popular book series of the same name. Of course, with the whole pandemic going on and movie theaters being closed, Disney and other studios had no choice but to change the release schedule for their movies. Some studios decided to just release their movies to streaming or on demand. DreamWorks did it with Trolls World Tour, Warner Bros. Did it with Scoob. Disney, however, still wants a chance to release most of their upcoming features in theaters, except for Artemis Fowl. They decided to release it on Disney Plus, while still delaying it by a couple of weeks. It makes sense that they would do this considering the other live-action adaptations based on books weren't big moneymakers. Speaking of A Wrinkle in Time, I remember tweeting my frustration with that movie a couple of years ago, and, well, let's just say the director didn't exactly agree anyway. I've never read any of the books that Artemis Fowl is based on, so I didn't know what to expect, although according to people who have read the books, they apparently changed quite a lot. I watched this with no knowledge of the source material, and I must say Disney was very smart to not wait to release this in theaters. This was painful! Basically, it's about this super intelligent kid named Artemis whose dad, played by Colin Farrell, gets kidnapped by a villain who wants an object called the Aculos, which we really don't know much about. The movie just labels it as this important object, but they don't take time to explain it any further than that. So why should we care? I have no idea. There's also fairies involved, and Artemis traps one of them, and of course they have a truce later on, blah blah blah. I hated this movie. Its biggest problem is that it tries to cram in so many story elements that it doesn't take time to have these elements progress. It doesn't explain a lot of things, and there is no character development. It mostly focuses on being this CGI spectacle, but it really lacks a lot of story, thus making everything confusing. It's almost as if it forgot to actually be a movie. It even has a 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. Wow, that high, huh? Interesting. Even before it came out, audiences knew it wasn't going to be anything amazing. Still, I doubt anyone could have guessed that it would end up being this bad. My least favorite character in the movie is Mulch Diggums, played by Josh Gad. He narrates the story while being interrogated in a cell on the sea, and I have no idea what the point of it was. It adds absolutely nothing. The story would have been better told if done visually. Instead, we have to put up with Olaf doing a Batman impression while dressed as a Hagrid ripoff. He appears quite a lot in the film, and each scene he's in is just annoying. There was even a part where he unhinges his jaw with very awful CGI, and he starts eating dirt, and he shoots it out of his ass. I wish I were making this up. Then there's the main character, Artemis, whom this film is named after. Getting a role as a main character in a Disney film is a big deal. However, I find it very hard to believe that of all the kids who auditioned, he was the best. His performance was really not good. He constantly gives this uninterested expression on his face whenever he's seen. I know people will probably defend him by saying it's his first time being in a movie and that he's a kid, but I'm here to tell you that that means absolutely nothing. Jojo Rabbit was a movie that came out last year, and that had an amazing child actor who had never acted in a movie before. So there's no excuse for this. It also doesn't help that Artemis is super boring. There's nothing interesting about him. He's just a really smart kid, but has no personality outside of that. The movie is literally named after him, yet he's nothing special. Even though I haven't read the books, one thing I do know is that he's not supposed to be a good guy. To make things worse, at the end of the film, he calls himself a criminal mastermind. Just, what? He literally did nothing to earn that title. By the way, Judi Dench is in this movie too. I really feel bad for her since she was just in Cats 6 months ago. It's hard to watch her in another terrible movie. The voice she's doing in this gets irritating after the first time she speaks. There's really not a single good performance to be found. Even the actors who we know can act give such phoned-in performances. There's also a lot of jokes that feel extremely out of place. Like at one point, Josh Gad says Judi Dench looks like David Bowie if he were a fairy. I don't know how that can even be considered humorous. You know, Josh Gad is actually a pretty funny guy. You can't just have him shout Samantha for no reason and then make him mention David Bowie right out of nowhere. It's amazing what kind of levels this movie will go to make people laugh. The humor is extremely desperate. I want to say this movie is at least visually beautiful, but it's really not. There's too much awful CGI and poor editing choices. The whole world where the fairies are located is said to be beautiful, but it just looks ugly. I've only seen 2 of Kenneth Branagh's other films, Thor and Cinderella, 2 movies I also didn't particularly care for. One thing that all 3 of these movies have in common is that they are all shot in such a dull way. They're not very pleasing to the eyes. I tried my hardest to find any redeeming qualities, but I got nothing, which is a shame because this could have been something really good. A Wrinkle in Time was a bad movie, sure, but it's still easy to see that they tried with what they had to do. To their credit, turning that book into a movie is not easy. Disney had 20 years to make an Artemis Fowl adaptation, and this is what they came up with? I feel really bad for the fans of the books. All we got here was a cluttered mess with no cohesion. It just felt like a series of events that were happening that had barely anything to do with each other. It's not even the kind of bad that you can have fun with. It's just boring. Even when it comes to the action, like a fight with a giant troll in the house, that should be awesome, but no. I wasn't given any reason to care. There were no stakes. One character was about to die, but I knew they weren't gonna actually die. They even ended this movie in a way that sets up a possible sequel. They really want this to be a franchise. Disney has been on a roll with releasing mediocre or bad films lately, but this just might be one of their worst ever. I would rather watch Ralph Breaks the Internet than this movie again. I would rather watch Chicken Little than this movie again. I would rather watch the live-action Lion King. Actually, I wouldn't go that far. The point is, Artemis Fowl is an awful mess of a movie that just feels like it has no effort put into it. Fans of the book really deserve better than this. If you're a fan of the books, you will hate this for sure. If you've never read the books, you might still find a hard time enjoying it. It has absolutely no audience. Of the movies I've seen this year so far, this is the worst. I know it's been said before, but Artemis Fowl is indeed foul.